I don't know, man. I guess it all kind of started for me. I grew up in church. Whenever I was a kid, from the time I was born till the time I was 13 years old, my mom and dad, they were in and out of the church. But whenever I was 13, my mom and dad split up. They got a divorce, and we kind of quit going to church from there. And there came a time whenever I was about, I'd say I was probably about 15 or 16 years old, and there was a pretty crazy family incident that came about, and I was pulled out of my mom's home and actually had to go live with my grandparents. I was taken away from. I couldn't be around my siblings for a good time, and once I went to my grandparents is whenever I decided there was a little small Baptist church. I found myself going to this Baptist church, and from going to that Baptist church is where I got saved at, and I actually became a prayer warrior in the youth group. I was loving it, man, and through that church, I got my brothers and sisters coming, and they all wound up getting baptized and all. And then was whenever the Lord put the call on my life to become an evangelist. And so, I'm one of those guys. I keep it 100. Everything I do, I'm all in. I'm going to do it. And my dad, his belief was different than mine. He didn't necessarily believe in that I should be going to the Baptist church. So it started turning into this thing to where whenever when church got out, I had to come home, and I'd get home and he was always wanting to battle with me, tell me how I was doing wrong, and the Mormon church is the church that I need to be going to. Everything else is wrong. I shouldn't settle for second best, and it just became so hard for me that I just threw in the towel and I completely gave up on God. Everything that had to do with God, I was like, you know what? There's no way that there can be this much difficulty in trying to be a Christian, trying to live for the Lord. And from that, man, my life just went out of control. I lost all respect for everybody. For 2 or 3 years, I was never around my family. I was always running the streets doing drugs. And there were times in and out that I would come to my senses and I would go to church and I'd hit the altar and ask God, forgive me, Lord, I want to live for you. That Sunday morning, and I would leave church that afternoon and I was right back into the same thing, just I would lose control, man. And so I struggled with drugs and alcohol for the whole, I don't know, man, it was 10 years I struggled with it. And I found myself in jail. I'm going to fast forward. I found myself in jail after I had went to a rehab. I had about 2 years where I was clean, living for the Lord, and I relapsed. And when I relapsed, in that relapse, robbed some junior stores. And in this, I found myself in jail. So that's where I came to my point where I'm like, okay, God, I want to live for you again. I can't live in this mess that I've made of my life. And so I spent about 45 days in jail. And in that 45 days, I went to the faith-based dorm. And I've got these men of God, they're coming in and they're preaching 5 days a week. And so I'm in the Word, and I come out of jail, and I want to do right. I want to get in church. And so I do good for a little while, and I quit doing what was working for me, and I found myself right back into the addiction again. It was like I'm struggling with drugs, and it had such a hold on my life, I just couldn't get away from it. And I would pray. I remember at a point, right before I went back to jail, I remember I put sticky notes up all over my whole house, my bathroom mirror, my dresser, my nightstand, pieces of paper. I would write, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I'm praying and praying through this, trying to fight this addiction, but I just couldn't. I would pray and cry, and the next thing I know, I'd go get high on crack. And it just came such a mess, man. I'd do good for a week. This is whenever I was probably at my lowest point in my life. And so that's whenever I find myself back in jail. I violated because I'd started drinking again, got into an altercation. I get out of jail, winds up, they finally put me back in jail. I do 6 months in jail, and I go through another treatment program. And in this treatment program, it's in the faith-based dorm of the jail. And so I'm in a treatment program, and I'm in the faith-based dorm. And in that, I just finally told myself, you know what, God, I'm not going to run from you anymore. I want to live for you. And that was the point in my life where I finally realized it didn't matter what anybody else thought about me. I want to live for God, and I can't live this destructive life anymore. And all the years prior to that, I was always trying to hide from the things that I had done in my past. I wanted to cover them up. I didn't want to confront them. I didn't want to face them. And so in that, I was able to use that 6 months to be able to expose all the things that I had hid from in my past. That's what bound me. Mm-hmm. And I was able to be finally free from that. You know, the cheating on my wife. I was able to openly tell her about these things, ask her forgiveness, ask God to forgive me. I was able to talk to my family about all these things. And so finally, I wasn't bound by that. I found, like you said, for once in my life, all the weight had lifted off my shoulders. And I literally understood what it meant to be free. Like Big Daddy Weave sings that song, Redeemed. I actually felt redeemed for once in my life. And that's just a little bit about my story, It's not too much. How long was that?